There are trades that go to the moon, and then there are the ones that take you to the very brink of the abyss. The kind that makes you question every single life choice you've ever made. For every millionaire, there's a guy staring at a negative account balance, wondering if ramen for the rest of his life is really so bad. This is a story about those guys, the legends, the degens, and the absolutely bonkers bets that define Wall Street bets. So grab some tendies, hit that rocket emoji, and hold on tight. He saw something nobody else did. Maybe it was a glitch in the matrix. Maybe it was a crystal ball made of pure financial hopium. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the most bonkers galaxy brain thesis in the history of retail trading. Everyone else saw a dying relic of a company, a place where dads bought birthday gifts for their kids and grandmas bought those ridiculous controllers for their Wii. But Keith Gill, the man the internet would come to know as U/deep fucking value, saw a fire in the belly of a dinosaur. He saw a stock that was so hated, so aggressively shorted by hedge funds that it was coiled up like a rattlesnake just waiting to strike. And what did this absolute madman do? He decided to bet his entire life savings on it. Not a small percentage, not some play money. We're talking his entire nest egg, a cool few $100,000, all poured into a single, terrifyingly risky position, GameStop call options. His co-workers at the time, probably all wearing polos and sensible slacks, must have thought he was a total degen, a lunatic who'd lost his mind. He was posting his positions online, a beacon of pure, unadulterated madness in a sea of cautious advice. The comments, naturally, were brutal. They called him every name in the book, a clown, a fool, a guy about to learn a very expensive lesson. They said his money was already gone, that he was trying to catch a falling knife, but he just kept buying, and he just kept holding. He wasn't looking at the price, he was looking at the story. The ultimate underdog story. And you have to wonder in those quiet, lonely moments, when the stock was trading sideways, barely moving a tick, did he ever doubt himself? Did he ever think, maybe they're right? Maybe I'm just a guy with a bad hunch and a mountain of student debt. Because that right there is where the terror truly begins. And then something clicked. A handful of traders, the real-life Sherlocks of the internet, started to piece it together. They dug through SEC filings, they crunched numbers, and they stared in disbelief at the one terrifying data point that changed everything. The short interest. It wasn't just high, it was bonkers. It was over 100% of the float. For those not fluent in finance Deegan speak, that means hedge funds had shorted more shares of GameStop than actually existed. It was a ticking time bomb, a glitch in the system, and a golden ticket all at once. The news spread like wildfire, a single spark that lit the fuse of an entire community. The memes started flowing. DFV's alone call option position became a rallying cry. He wasn't a crazy guy anymore, he was a prophet. The shorts were no longer just a bearish bet, they were the enemy. This wasn't about fundamentals or PE ratios anymore. This was a war. Apes versus suits. The little guys, the degens with their stimulus checks and their student loan money against the billionaires in their ivory towers. The irony was so thick you could slice it with a knife. The same people who scoffed at their diamond hands and ridiculed their YOLO bets were suddenly on the ropes. The suits, the ones who had been shorting this company into oblivion, were now trapped in a corner. Every time one of the apes bought a single share, it twisted the knife a little deeper. The pressure was building. The tension was palpable. The short interest climbed even higher. The entire financial world was watching, and the only question left was who would blink first. And for the first time in financial history, it was looking like it just might be Goliath. The fuse was lit, and the financial world held its breath. On that day, the market didn't just open, it went absolutely bananas. The stock wasn't just climbing, it was screaming. A green line on a chart that looked less like a graph or more like the launch path of a SpaceX rocket. The pressure from the short squeeze hit with the force of a supernova. Billions, with a B, were evaporating from the accounts of institutional investors faster than they could process what was happening. Melvin Capital and their ilk, Those titans of finance who thought they could bully a company into bankruptcy and profit from its demise were suddenly staring at a sea of red. The irony was a punch to the gut. The suits who had mocked DFI and his band of apes were now on the brink of ruin, all because a bunch of online degenerates with diamond hands decided they liked the stock. The media lost its mind. Pundits on CNBC, who just weeks earlier were dismissing it as a childish prank, were now frantically trying to explain this new, chaotic reality to their bewildered audience. It was pure, unadulterated chaos, a glorious, beautiful disaster. The little guy, the retail investor, the person with a few $100 and a dream of chicken tendies was actually winning. For a brief, shining moment, the entire system felt like it was breaking in the most spectacular way possible. It was a chaotic, beautiful, and absolutely terrifying moment in history. The tables had turned, the power had shifted, and everyone, from the billionaires to the broke boys, was left to wonder if this was the new normal. And that right there is the scariest part of all. Everyone dreams of a cheat code, don't they? That one secret button combo in the game of life that unlocks unlimited power, unlimited lives, and, in this case, unlimited money. For one brilliant bonkers, again known as you/control the narrative, that dream briefly became reality. He had a small account, just a couple grand, on the Robinhood app, nothing special. But then he stumbled into a glitch, a glorious, beautiful, mind-bending bug that allowed him to get what looked like infinite leverage. He could sell call options, and instead of showing a negative balance for his new position, the app would just give him credit. His $2,000 account balance suddenly swelled into a phantom $50,000. He wasn't a day trader anymore, he was a god. He felt like he'd hacked the system, a true genius who had found the one little crack in the armor of a billion-dollar company. The adrenaline must have been pure, uncut dopamine. So what do you do when the universe hands you a free 5-figure account balance? You do the only logical thing. You go all in on Apple puts. He documented the entire trade for the world to see, a triumphant display of hubris and disbelief. He was certain this was his ticket to the moon, his one-way trip out of ramen for dinner purgatory. He couldn't lose. The money wasn't even real. What could go wrong? But this is Wall Street bets. Something always goes wrong. And the scariest part about playing with phantom money is that the losses, they turn out to be terrifyingly real. When the trade went south, as it was always destined to, that fantasy account balance didn't just disappear. It didn't just reset to zero. It went from a glorious $50,000 to a devastating negative $46,000, leaving him with a debt he never asked for and a very painful lesson on the difference between a bug and a feature. There's a genre of content on the internet, a dark little corner of the web that's so profoundly uncomfortable to watch it becomes impossible to look away. We call it loss porn. It's the visual, visceral reality of a degene's world collapsing in a single gut-wrenching moment. And no video embodies this twisted art form more perfectly than the one from the guy who was simply known as the Goo Guy. You're watching the video, right? You see the screen. The numbers are a blur of red, flashing with the furious rhythmic pulse of a heart attack. The stock, once a beacon of hope, is now a runaway train derailing in slow motion. The account balance is just bleeding, dropping thousands of dollars every few seconds. You see the trader's face, a mix of disbelief and pure, unadulterated terror. He's staring at the screen, jaw slack, his eyes fixed on the inevitable. It's a silent film, a tragedy without words, because what words could possibly describe this? You can almost feel the air being sucked out of the room, the hope draining from his very soul. The silence hangs heavy, thick with tension. And then it happens. A single, defeated sound. A noise that isn't a word, isn't a scream, isn't even a cry, is the sound of a dream dying. The sound of a man watching his future disappear. The sound of a soul leaving a body. Just a sad, pathetic, and utterly unforgettable goo. It was an exclamation of total and complete surrender. A surrender to the market, to the chaos, to the painful, irrefutable reality that the money was gone. All of it, just like that. And in that moment, in that one small tragic syllable, he spoke for every single person who has ever made a terrible bet and lived to regret it. It was the purest form of fear, captured on camera for all of us to witness. In the Deegan world, the most dangerous 4 words you can utter are "thus can't fail." It's the kind of hubris that attracts the attention of the market gods, and they love nothing more than a good old-fashioned Greek tragedy. Enter U/1 R0NYMAN. A man who believed he had found the perfect foolproof trade. He wasn't a reckless gambler, you see. He was a meticulous schemer, a brilliant financial mind who had discovered a flaw in the system. His plan was a box spread, an option strategy so complex and seemingly airtight that it promised a guaranteed profit. He saw an interest rate arbitrage opportunity, a risk-free way to make a few $1,000s with no chance of losing. He documented the entire trade for the world to see, posting charts and explanations with the smug confidence of a man who just found a cheat code in a video game. He was a genius. He had cracked the code. He was the smartest guy in the room. What he didn't count on was the one tiny, microscopic, utterly catastrophic detail that would wipe him out and change Robinhood's platform forever. The trade was set to expire on a weekend. The brokerage would process the cash settlement at midnight on Saturday, but the options could be exercised after the stock market had closed on Friday. What U/1 R0NYMAN failed to account for was the possibility of his options being assigned after hours, a detail that turned his perfect, no-lose trade into a ticking time bomb. The moment the numbers settled, his small profit vanished, replaced by a brutal 6-figure loss. His brilliant, risk-free strategy blew up in his face, a perfect, beautiful act of market irony. It was a brutal reminder that in this game, nothing, absolutely nothing, is guaranteed. The final YOLO isn't a trade, it's a prayer. It's the last-ditch Hail Mary from a Deegan who's already been chewed up and spit out by the market one too many times. You've probably seen the video. He's there, staring at the screen, a single massive position open, his future hanging on a knife's edge. He's live-streaming it for some reason, inviting the entire internet to bear witness to either his glorious triumph or his spectacular ruin. The initial bravado is there, the confident smirks, the boasts of "to the moon, boys." He's convinced this is it, this is the one. All of his previous bad bets, all of his losses, they were just leading him to this moment, to this one final perfect trade that would make it all right. But you know what's coming? The stock, of course, starts to move in the wrong direction, slowly at first. Just a little tick down, the smile on his face tightens, the jokes stop, the live chat starts to fill with a mix of concerned advice and gleeful schadenfreude. The descent accelerates, the numbers on his screen, once gloriously green, begin to bleed a terrifying shade of red. His eyes widen. The panic, once a whisper, becomes a scream. His mouth is moving, but the words are just please to the market gods, to anyone, to please, just please let it go back up. And then it happens. The position gets knocked. The account is gone. It's a total, complete and unrecoverable meltdown. And in that moment, in the silence that follows the screaming, he becomes a public spectacle, an accidental monument to the sheer, horrifying finality of a bad bet. His face, a mask of pure despair, is now a part of the internet's twisted art gallery. And you can't help but wonder why anyone would ever choose to put that on display. Maybe because misery loves company. Or maybe because deep down, we all want to see what the final terrifying moment looks like. Just so we know what we're risking, you have to understand the mentality. When you've got nothing left to lose, every bet is a Hail Mary. This wasn't some Wall Street whiz kid playing with house money. This was an unemployed truck driver, a guy with a family to feed, and just a few $1,000s in his account. He saw a highly volatile stock and decided to go all in on out-of-the-money call options. It was a literal lottery ticket, a bet on a company to soar to a price it hadn't seen in years, and to do it in just a single, glorious week. The premium was cheap because the odds were astronomical. The numbers on his screen didn't know his story, didn't care that every single cent was on the line. They just kept ticking, a cold, uncaring display of raw probability. The days crawled by. He checked his phone every 5 minutes, his stomach a knot of pure anxiety. Every green tick was a shot of adrenaline, a rush of hope. Every red tick was a punch to the gut, a reminder that the clock was ticking down to zero. The tension was an invisible hand on his throat. He'd read about these kinds of trades, the ones that turned a few $100 into $1 million, and he'd laughed. He told himself that was for other people, for the truly insane. But here he was, staring at his own personal Hail Mary. The final day was pure torture. The stock price was so close, yet so unbelievably far. He watched the clock tick down, minute by minute, second by second, the final bell approaching like the end of the world. He was either about to change his life forever, or he was about to lose it all, and in the terrifying final moment before the bell rang, he was completely and utterly alone with his choice. We've seen the meltdowns, the gauze, and the soul-crushing despair. But what happens when the coin actually lands on heads? What happens when a 1 in a million shot actually hits? This is the story of the Palantir King, a nameless djinn who defied the gravity of a common sense and turned a modest bet into a fortune. Palantir for a long time was a controversial stock. It was the boogeyman of Silicon Valley, a data company that worked with governments and intelligence agencies. The suits on Wall Street were divided, but on WallStreetBets it was a battleground. For every bull, there was a bear calling it a pump and dump, a speculative meme stock with no real value. But our guy, the Palantir King, saw something more. He saw a deep, almost irrational belief in the company's future, and he decided to double down on that belief. He bought call options, a simple terrifying bet that the stock would go up, and it would do so fast. He posted his position, and the comments were predictable. He was told he was crazy, that he was throwing his money away on a company that was too volatile, too risky. But the king had diamond hands. He held on as the stock went sideways, as it dipped, as the paper hands around him sold off in a panic. The tension must have been unbearable. Every tick down was a cold shot of fear. A question whispered in the back of his mind, was I wrong? And then it happened. The stock price started to climb. Not a little bump, but a steady, inexorable rise. A major contract was announced, then another, and then another. The stock price didn't just climb, it went to the moon. His modest investment, that little YOLO bet, swelled to a massive fortune. It was the purest form of vindication, a glorious triumph in a world filled with painful losses. He became a legend, a testament to the fact that sometimes, just sometimes, the insane bet actually works, and that, in a weird, twisted way, is a whole new kind of scary. In a world of infinite, soul-crushing loss, the SPAC was supposed to be a safe bet. It was the ultimate dig-and-play with training wheels. You see, a special purpose acquisition company, or SPAC, is basically a blank check company that goes public with the promise to find a real company to merge with. And until that merger, the stock is basically guaranteed to trade around $10. It's got a floor, a safety net, a beautiful, comforting $10 safety net. So a new kind of gambler emerged, a different breed of degenerate. Instead of YOLOing on weekly calls, they pooled their money, a gang of pre-merger gamblers betting on the next big thing. The name of the SPAC was meaningless, just a jumble of letters and numbers. The real game was the rumor mill. Was it an EV company, a new space tourism player? Was it the next Tesla, the one that would turn their $10 shares into a glorious moonshot? The anxiety during the waiting period was a unique kind of torture. It was a tick-tock, a silent race against time and the specter of leaked information. Every minute was a nerve-wracking gamble that some shadowy insider already knew their fate. The public announcements were their judgment day. The stock would either rocket to the stratosphere, a glorious immediate payoff that turned a few thousand into a life-changing fortune, or it would plummet into irrelevance, their safe bet turning into a slow, agonizing bleed into oblivion. The irony was brutal. The very thing designed to protect them, that $10 floor, became a prison. They couldn't sell because they were all in on the dream, on the hope that the next press release would be the one that changed everything. For some it did, for most it didn't. It's a reminder that even when the house gives you a safety net, you can still find a way to fall. You see, the party wasn't over just because the spec had merged and the stock had its glorious moment in the sun. For a true degen, the party only ends when there's nothing left to lose. And for this one trader, it was just getting started. The merger announcement was a success. The stock saw a beautiful pop, a glorious little green candle that was the culmination of months of waiting, of gambling on a dream. He was up big. He could have sold right there, booked a solid 5-figure profit, and walked away a winner. But why sell now? The narrative, the endless chatter on the subreddit, told him this was just the beginning. The moonshot was imminent. He convinced himself he had diamond hands, that he was a hero, a legend, in the making. He was holding for 1,000% gain, not a measly 50. That's where the pain started. Slowly at first, the stock began its inevitable collapse. It didn't crash, it bled. A little down one day, a little more the next. He told himself it was just a temporary dip. He doubled down on his belief, refusing to sell. His friends from the group, the ones who had taken their profits, tried to warn him, but he wouldn't listen. His hope had calcified into pure, unadulterated greed. The narrative in his head was so much louder than the reality on his screen. The brutal truth was that the party was in fact over. The hype was gone. The insiders were gone and the stock was heading straight back to where it began. The irony? He had won the lottery. He had the winning ticket in his hand. But in his delusion, he held it for so long, he ended up throwing it away. And in a game where everyone else wants to win, watching someone snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, now that's a different kind of scary. You know how most degens are betting on the rocket ship, the moonshot, the glorious trip to Andromeda? This guy was different. He was a market nihilist, a doomsday prophet, a man who saw the entire system as a house of cards just waiting for a stiff breeze. He didn't want the market to go up, he wanted it to burn. His bet wasn't on a stock or a meme coin, it was on fear itself. He went all in on the VIX, a notoriously volatile instrument often called the fear index because it spikes when the market panics. It was a high-risk, high-reward strategy that flew in the face of conventional wisdom. He sat there, a solitary bear, in a bull market, watching his capital bleed out. Day after day, the market ground sideways. His account dwindled, the value of his options decaying into dust. The taunts from the other traders were relentless. They called him a fool, a pessimist, a guy with a portfolio that looked like a slow-motion car crash. He was a punchline, a cautionary tale in real time. But he held on, convinced that the word was wrong and he was right, waiting for the one unexpected event, the black swan, that would justify his madness. He was convinced that the word was holding its breath, and he was the only one who could hear its heart pounding. And then it happened. Not a financial crisis, not a major company collapse. It was something else entirely. A geopolitical event so sudden and chaotic, it sent shockwaves through the global economy. The market didn't just stumble, it fell. The VOOX, which had been dormant for months, exploded to unheard-of levels. His account, once a bleeding wasteland of red, turned into a supernova of glorious green. His terrifying bet on destruction had finally and spectacularly paid off. He had stared into the abyss, and for once, the abyss paid him back. He had done it. He'd ridden the initial rocket of the GameStop saga, pocketing a solid, respectable profit. He was no longer a degen. He was a smart money guy, a hero with a story to tell. But the stock market, that slow, methodical beast, suddenly felt boring. Then he saw them. The posts, the memes, the screenshots of people turning pocket change into mansions with a single click. The siren song of meme cryptocurrencies. He saw a coin with a name that sounded like a half-eaten sandwich, backed by nothing but a few rocket emojis and a promise of to the moon. And he knew, in his gut, that this was the next great frontier. He poured his profits, his hard-won tendies, into this absurd digital asset. He watched the price chart, a glorious vertical green line that went up and up and up. He was up 100%, then 500%, then an insane 1000%. The community was ecstatic, a euphoric cult of believers, all convinced they were about to be the new millionaires. It was the best high he'd ever felt. But what he didn't realize was that he wasn't riding a wave. He was just a piece of driftwood being carried by a tidal wave of manipulation. The pump and dump was a classic con, a grift as old as time itself, just with a new, shinier coat of paint. The organizers, the whales who had created the coin and bought in at the very bottom, were watching, waiting for the perfect moment. And when the price hit its peak, they all hit sell at the exact same time. The rug was pulled. The chart, that beautiful green rocket ship, instantly turned into a vertical red line of despair. He watched in horror as his 1000% gain became a 99% loss in a matter of minutes. The community went from a cheering crowd to a wailing mob of paper hands. The money was gone. His profits, his dreams, all vanished into the ether. He had won the game of stocks only to lose the game of crypto, and in the process, he learned the most brutal, scariest lesson of all, that nothing, absolutely nothing, can prepare you for the sudden, violent reality of a meme coin mistake. For a few glorious, unbelievable days, it felt like the apes had won. The stock was soaring, the hedge funds were bleeding, and the little guy was finally on top. We all thought we were finally in the same game, that the same rules applied to everyone. We were wrong. The betrayal came not from the market, but from the very app that had democratized trading in the first place. You remember the day. It felt like the world just stopped. The market was open, the stock was in the midst of a violent, exhilarating swing, and suddenly you couldn't buy. Then, for a trader like the one we are following, a guy who had seen his account go from a few $100 to a life-changing amount, a chilling message popped up. Trading on this stock is no longer supported. They could sell, sure, but they couldn't buy. The gates were closed on the way in, but they were wide open on the way out. For our guy, watching his gains disappear in real time was a special kind of hell. He saw the price plummeting not because of a change in fundamentals, but because his fellow degens couldn't come to his rescue. The market makers were free to short the stock into oblivion, but the retail investors were locked out, their collective power neutralized in a single gut-wrenching moment. The outrage was palpable. The memes of triumph were replaced with memes of betrayal. The narrative shifted from "the little guy wins" to "the game is rigged." The dream of financial freedom, of flipping the script on Wall Street, crumbled in an instant. This wasn't a loss of capital, it was a loss of faith. It was the brutal, terrifying realization that you're not in a fair game, you're not even on the board. You're just a pawn, and they can change the rules whenever they want. The day the music died was the day the degens realized they had been playing on someone else's turf all along. And so we arrive at the final lesson. The great terrifying paradox of Wall Street bets. We've seen the triumphs, the glorious stories of people like DFA turning a few grand into a fortune, a triumphant middle finger to the old guard. And we've seen the gut-wrenching, soul-crushing despair of the guy, the infinite leverage glitch, the post-merger pain. The irony, the beautiful, brutal irony, is that all of these stories, the heroic and the tragic, come from the exact same place. They are born from the same combination of insane conviction, blind luck, and a complete disregard for conventional wisdom. The line between genius and pure insanity isn't just thin, it's non-existent. One day, you're a legend with diamond hands, a prophet who saw what no one else could. The next, you're a cautionary tale, a public spectacle, the face of a loss so epic it becomes a meme. It's the same trade, the same logic, the same all-or-nothing bet. The only thing that separates the two outcomes is a random whisper from the market gods, a sudden piece of news, or a single unpredictable tick of the price. The scariest part of all isn't the millions lost. It isn't the devastating meltdowns. It's the simple, chilling knowledge that every single person who steps into this arena, who makes that YOLO bet, is just a coin flip away from being a legend or a loser. You might be watching these stories now, laughing at the failures and admiring the wins. But how long until it's your name on that chart? How long until it's your voice saying "goo"? How long until it's your story being told?